Maserati has finally replaced the Gran Turismo with a brand new model, and it is a beauty. I want to compare it in this video to the MC20 because I think the Gran Turismo is a much better design. I'm going to show you why when we compare it to the front, side, and rear. We have the same twin-turbo V6 that we have in the MC20, but it's been a little detuned here for the Gran Turismo, and we also have a brand new EV, a fully electric Gran Turismo, which feels weird. I don't think I'm ready to have Maserati be full EV. I think it's gonna lose a bit of that Italian soul, specifically when you have it in a body like this. It kind of needs to have at least a V6. I was hoping for a V8, but that's not going to happen. The new power here is 483 horsepower from this twin-turbo V6, up from 454 in the old 4.7-liter Ferrari V8, and that is for the base model. If you go up to the Trofeo trim, you have 542 horsepower. 0 to 60 here takes about 3.5 seconds, and a top speed of about 200 miles per hour. The Folgore, the EV, is fitted with 3 electric motors. You have 1 in the front axle, and then you have 2 in each rear wheel. And together, this gives you 750 electric horsepower, 0 to 60 in 2.7 seconds. Same top speed at about 200 miles per hour. I wonder how fast the battery drains if you cruise at 150 miles per hour. Price will likely start just under $200,000 for the base Modena trim, and it will go on sale next year here in the US. So let's have a look at this design. I want to show you first of all the difference between the internal combustion engine up here, and then we have the electric Folgore down here. So we have some changes in the front end. You can see that we have a much bigger intake in the front, and I honestly think this looks so much better than the EV version, which has this very small intake on the side. I think this is functional, but this curvature feels a little stressed to me. It feels, I don't know, it just feels more forced than it does here. This feels like a more natural front end, and this intake works, in my opinion, better with the new grille that we have here as well, and the 3D printed logo in the middle right here. As we go on to the side, you have these outlets on the internal combustion engine, and here you actually have some LEDs sitting inside there, which looks pretty cool. Looking at the wheels, very important, because the old Gran Turismo, that was the biggest problem I had with it, was the wheels. They just ruined everything about the car because they sat too far in the body. It was like a rebuilt title or something. Something happened with the rear end, and the wheel didn't really fit in there. But here we have a much better fitment of the wheel, and I'm really glad to see that. I would definitely pick the Trofeo wheels over the Folgore wheels down here. I'm not a huge fan of these EV wheels, but I think the Trofeo wheels looks really good right here, specifically in combination with this Rosso Gran Turismo color that we have right here. So let's look at the front end and the MC20, because this is the difference here. I feel like these two cars, they come from two completely different companies. Yes, the graphics look very similar. As you can see, the front headlights, the front in general looks pretty similar to the MC20, but it's all in the details. The MC20 feels like a static design to me, because we have more of a product design approach to the graphic features in the MC20 than we have in the Gran Turismo, which has a lot more curvature and fluid to its overall lines everywhere. And I love this sharp line that we have in the fender right here. We also have it in the rear. Sharp lines in combination with very soft and fluid lines. That to me is peak Italian exotic design, and I think they really nailed it with the new Gran Turismo, and specifically when we now have the wheels actually fitting in the wheelhouse. So looking at the side view, this is where I'm going to spend the most time, because this is where it makes most sense to talk about why I think the Gran Turismo is such a better design. So let's have a look at this design. We have this sharp line, as I said, sharp line in combination with very fluid, soft surfaces, very Italian. We have another sharp line right here, and then we have a third sharp line in the bottom going up like this. Everything else is super smooth and fluid, emotional design that I want to see from Maserati specifically. And it feels like they really nailed this design. I think it's a great modernization of the previous Gran Turismo as well. So looking at the MC20, And what I think is going on here is I made a video on this when this first came out. I also made a redesign of this to try to make it a little more dynamic, a little more Maserati in this shape. So the lower part here feels like it could be a Polestar with all these angles here. You have a very product design approach to this, and there is not a lot of emotion or dynamics in these lines. They're very static. We have one line going straight, then a little corner, and then another line going straight down. Same thing here. We have this straight line that cuts into the body going upwards, and we have that same line mirrored in this pillar. So this goes straight here as well, creating this static feeling that I think is not really suitable for Maserati. But then when you look at the top part, we still have these gorgeous curvatures that we have in the new Gran Turismo as well, but still a little more static because this line is not as stretched out, and this feels like it's almost the same line on each side of the car, in the front and in the rear. And then we have the greenhouse sitting almost perfectly centered. So the top part is almost perfectly centered in this design, creating more of this very balanced car, but it doesn't look like it had a motion either forward or backward. This detail down here, and comparing it to the Gran Turismo, just look at how much more fluid and soft and elegant this Gran Turismo is compared to this treatment of the lower part of the MC20. That's the biggest reason why I think the Gran Turismo is such a better suited design for Maserati with these kind of treatments, specifically with the proportions and the graphics. Now you might say, well, this is a mid-engine car, so it's really hard to get some movement in these type of proportions. Well, the thing is, let me introduce to you the 12-year-old Ferrari 458 Italia. Still mid-engine car, and also this is also mid-engine technically because the engine sits right here behind the front axle. But looking at the gorgeous 458 Italia, this is one of my all-time favorite mid-engine cars. And just look at all the movement that we have going on in these lines, creating this forward movement. Even though it is a mid-engine car, it has such grace and elegance to it. This design, very simple lines, but it still has this forward arrow looking at it from a side view that's completely lacking in the MC20. I think the MC20 is a cool looking car, but it doesn't feel Italian to me. It feels more Scandinavian mixed with maybe some German design, while the new Gran Turismo is 100% Italian design. Last but not least, let's have a look at the rear view, and this is probably my favorite view of this new Gran Turismo. This is one of these cars again that I can't wait to see in real life, because I think it's gonna be a stunner when I can see it in 3D and analyze all the details of this car and the curvatures. But look at how beautifully the rear wheels sit inside this huge muscle. It makes it sit very nicely, and it feels like all the power is sent to the rear. We also have a very simple treatment of the rear end with a couple of few lines. This is the Trofeo trim with the gorgeous wheels here as well, as you can see, which fit perfectly now. And we have some simple lines in the front end as well, creating this muscle in the front. I really like the new treatment of the taillights as well. I think they have a very dynamic and very thin. It looks nice. It feels like it suits these proportions. Same thing in the diffuser. There's nothing crazy going on here. It's very clean and elegant, and I think this is one of these designs that's going to look really good today, and it's also going to look great in 50 years from now when you look back at this, because this to me is exactly what I want to see a two-door front engine Maserati GT car look like. The proportions are just on point. And looking at the MC20 down here, this is also probably my favorite view of the MC20. I think the rear end looks pretty decent here, but it has nowhere near the elegance and the exotic feel that I get from the Gran Turismo up there, for example. It still feels a lot more static, and we have this big chamfer here, so we can see the thickness sort of the body right here before it goes into the black piece and the big diffuser in the lower end. So I'm really happy that they decided to go back to the roots with the Gran Turismo, and this is such a great update of the previous generation, which lasted for a very long time, and it still looked very good. You just had to have some different wheels on that car, and it was a beautiful car. I'm curious to see how many people are gonna choose the EV over the V6. If it was me, I would definitely go with the Trofeo V6, because I'm not ready for a car that looks this good and has has the Maserati badge on it to be electric.